Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Ortiz, and I'm going to be the first speaker for you guys today. This is going to be the SAT scores back session, I hope most of you took the test. And don't worry, I will explain to you how to find you can't hear anything. Okay. 1 second. Can you guys hear now? Am I clear? The audio is fine for me. Okay. Crystal clear. Okay, excellent. Anyway, so I will be explaining to you how to get your scores if you have not gotten them yet as we proceed. Okay? So, what is on today's agenda? Well, first, I will talk a little bit, or quite a lot of it, about what is the SAT and how it's used in admissions, the admissions process, primarily for U.S. schools, but other schools as well. Then, how did I do? That's where I'm going to talk about your scores specifically and how to find them and all that. And then, so now what is the aftermath of that, which we will talk about. We will see some few examples of problems from the test you guys took, and some strategies as well. And then we will run through a number of programs that we have that might help you. So that is me. So I am a master trainer for the SAT, but also for the ACT and GMAT and GRE, among other tests I teach. And I've been teaching in this part of the world since approximately 2004, so that's about, what, 16 years? But I've been teaching the SAT for about 18 and a half or 19 years almost. So I have a lot of experience in any event, so you guys can look at that for a second. I'm originally from New York City, which, you know, is clear at the moment is kind of under a cloud, but so is everywhere else, so that's okay. Yeah, so let's move on. What is the SAT? The SAT, and I'm sure you guys know this, but the SAT is a college admissions test that schools use primarily to sort of average out what your scores are, what your grades are. So I can talk more about that, but it's part of a large complement of test scores and other features that comprise your admissions portfolio, right? So the SAT, of course, is the major test. There's also the ACT, which I can talk about later if you wish, which is the SAT and the ACT are pretty much interchangeable. Okay, so how is the SAT scored? And you guys should have taken a test, so most of it should be familiar to you, either because you took the test or because it's entered the culture more broadly, which I assume it has. But anyway, so let's start with evidence-based reading and writing, because that's first, even though it's second on the screen. That's 2 to 800. And then now notice that those are two tests, reading and writing. So reading is first and then writing. And then you have two math sections, one with a calculator, one with no calculator section, sorry, and then with calculators, section. So that means you have a total of anywhere from 400 to 1,600 points. Now, I just want to be clear, guys, that does not mean, that there are 1,600 questions. God forbid, that would be terrible. But this is a scale score, and I'll explain that as we move along. So, what is a good SAT score? Well, Well, guys, if you can tell me what a good SAT score is, you guys can type it in. I just want to see what possible answers there are. Oh, Lord, 1600. No, that's perfect. 1500 plus? Yeah, that's stellar. It depends on the universities you are aiming for. Yes, correct. Now, let me just, 1500, as I said, is the top echelon. 1600 is quite difficult to get. Now, that's not a good score. It's not even a stellar score. That is a superlative score. But you know, if that's your goal, good for you. But you might have to work for it. But yes, so I would say 1500 plus is a stellar score, as I just said. But really, if we come back down, and as the last person said, it very much depends on where you're applying to, right? And what you need the SAT for. So going back down, if you, the beginning of a truly competitive score would be 600 on each side. So that would be a total of 1200. But that's just the beginning of a competitive score. But once you enter even the third tier, so to speak, schools, you need to break essentially 1400. But again, you may not need to. So let's see. Yes. So here you have, because one of the other things we use, or the schools use SAT scores, is not just for admission, but to award aid. And I would assume that this particularly interests the parents, if you have any in the audience. But here are a few, and these are clearly top tier schools. Columbia 1550, which is where I went for graduate school. If you read my bio, 1550, an average merit award, $68,718. Williams College, which is third, which is also where I went. That was my undergraduate, and I want to make a plea for liberal arts schools. So that's why that's there, and that's $66,066. And Duke University, the second, again, 66. So you see, it's roughly around the same. And again, these are top schools. So the scores range from about, let's say, 1460 to around 1550, 1560 or so. So, oops, what did I do here? Let me see. Yeah. Okay. So how did I do? Now, in order to show you that, I need you to go on to, if you haven't seen your scores yet, I need you to go on to Princeton.com, which of course you've seen because you've taken the test, right? So, and once you're there and you sign in with your username and your password, this is the screen that you will see, right? So I'll give you guys like maybe a minute or two to sign on to that, if you want to, because I'm going to show you how to use the online student center. So I want to make sure that you're on. One more minute. Done. Good. Thanks, Shitij. Done. Thanks, Yusuf. Okay, so I'm going to open up this, and you guys can follow along. Wait, 1, 2. Yes. Sorry. Okay, so you'll see this screen, right? Now, there are 2 ways to get your tests. You can either go to tests up here on the upper left-hand corner or reports, right? So let's go to reports. Okay. So let's see this one, right? So again, if you want to see the report, you go to the right-hand side and you click the button that says, obviously, view report. Okay? So here are the options. First of all, you have an option to print if you have a printer, but you can look at it online. So first of all, it says your total SAT score is 1130. So if you take a look a little closer, you have the math score and the verbal score, right? Which is out of 800. If you take a look at the right-hand side, if you've put in a goal, because when you onboard, there's a lot of information that is asked of you, amongst which is what target scores do you have. So if you have target scores, they'll appear as well as the final ultimate score, right? Now, again, so these are the scores that matter primarily for your admissions process, but there are other scores. And if you look down here, you press that button and you'll see a bunch of scores come up, okay? So I want to talk a little bit about those scores in continuation. So this is data which, again, doesn't really affect you, but it is data about you that is available to anyone you send your SAT scores to, okay? So again, here, as I said, there were 2 sections, but 3 tests, right? So you have math, and so you might see that each of these is from 10 to 40. So you might think of it as 100 to 400 with a 0 lopped off, just, to familiarize yourself with it. But anyway, so this is out of 40, so this is 27 in math, 27 in reading, and 32 in writing. Again, all out of 40. So those are the test scores. Then to the right, you'll see cross-test scores. And you'll see 1 is analysis in history and social studies, and 2 is analysis in science. What each of that means is that, so you might have a math question, for example, that is, that deals with a graph that deals with historical events or social studies events. So that question would be marked as a social studies question, even though it's a math question, right? And you get scores for that, again, out of 40. And then there are 7 scores, which is graded from 1 to 15. So there's a lot of data. But anyway, returning to our 200 to 800 score, right? You see that you have a verbal score, right? And then if I click on the right, a math score as well, okay? Let's go back to verbal for a minute. So here you have the reading score and the writing score, right? So here you'll see, oops, 1 second, let me click on that again. Oh, why is that? Okay, so here you'll see the rundown, right? So if you got it right, like as in number 1, you get a check mark, okay? If you got it wrong, you get an X, but then if you hover over that, you get the answer you put, which is incorrect, than the correct answer. Okay? And you also get anything you left blank, which of course, there is no points given or taken away for that, but it's just blank. Which, by the way, you shouldn't do, but I'll come back to that later. Now, up here, well, let me go down here for a second. So if you want to, for example, look at your reading score, and you just want to look at the errors you made, for example, what you do is you can click off this, and then you'll see the errors and the blanks, right? And then you click on it again to bring back everything, okay? Now this is by section, but you can also view it by category, right? So again, if we want to just focus on what we got wrong, we can click on that, and then here you'll see a layout of everything the student got wrong by category. Okay, so let's go back to the section, because one last thing I want to talk about is, for example, if the student got number 4 wrong, right? So again, if we hover over it, you get the answer you put, the correct answer. If you click on the question, you get the entire question. So in this case, this is reading comprehension. So you get the passage, and then you get the question, both with the wrong answer and the right answer. And importantly, beneath that is an explanation, right? And there's an explanation available for everything. And when I say everything, I mean clearly the math section, there's an explanation available, but also, if you took a course and you were to do drills, right? Those would also appear in this format. So drill questions also appear this way, so you can also look at them that way. And then below you see writing and language, and then again, as I said earlier, you can look at math. Again, if we want to take a look only at what we got wrong, we click on that. And so here you see the 4 you got wrong and the 5 you skipped. No, Yusuf. So that's a good question, though. So Yusuf asked, are there points taken away? Before 2015 on the old SAT, when there were 5 answer choices as opposed to 4, yes, at that point, there was negative marking, which meant that if you got something wrong, provided there were answer choices, and I can go back to that and talk about that later if you want, but provided there were answer choices, you got a quarter point taken off if you got it wrong. So in that scenario, it didn't benefit you to guess randomly. In fact, very often it hurt you. But now, since 2015, which is the new SAT, so to speak, because it's been 4 years, so it's not new anymore, but there is no longer any guessing penalty, which is what they call it. So now, Yusuf and anyone else, you can, if you want to guess more aggressively, you should, right? All right. So I think that is that. Oh, I didn't see that question. 1 second. Do you see it in chat? Yeah. No, that's earlier. I can't hear anything. Oof. Okay. Suppose reasoning in the sections was wrong. Where and how can I get the specific questions? So, okay, so Suraj, so when you say reasoning, okay, so let's go to, 1 second. Let me just get this out of the way. So if we look at categories, so I don't see a category called reasoning, is there? Okay. Go up. Do you mean in general, Suraj? It's a practice.
Practice.
Oh, okay. So you mean specific questions to practice? In these sections, for example, doesn't really matter. Okay. So you mean reading comprehension, right? So so to practice, well, that's a course thing, but yes, you can see the questions and then on this is not a full online student center, but if you take a course, which I'll talk about later, you'll have a full online student center with drills and such, as I just said. And there you'll be able to match the kind of questions that you got wrong. So let me just show you the bottom of this page, right? On that side, yeah, because I want to go, yeah, okay. So keep going. Where is the, wait 1 second. This is okay. So
That's the service giving.
oh, okay. So it's not. Yeah. So at the bottom of the page, usually there's like a set of three things that you did particularly well on, 3 items that you did particularly well on, both math and verbal, and then on the other side there is things you could do better on. If you click on the print report icon, right where I have the hand, if you will, the mouse, if you click on that, you can get access to that for yourself. And I just want to address, I think Aditi said that she only took verbal. Great. Yeah. So you just maybe took the beginning of the test, not the end, because the full test is approximately 3 hours. Right. Okay. So let's go back to the. Okay. Great. So I hope everyone got to see their scores. Yes. So that was the online student center, as I just said. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about how to solve the Princeton review way, right? So I want to look at, so this is a copy of the test you took, and I have a few questions I want to highlight. Okay. So number 10. So the first question is section 1. Number 10, let me go back up, let me go back up, let me go back up. Yes, okay? Now, question number 10, as I'm sure you know if you've taken an SAT before, even a PSAT, is a vocabulary in context question. So, and it seems deceptively easy, and this is why I picked it. As used in line 80, head, quote unquote, most nearly means. So what we do here, not to give away too much, what we do here is we go back to line 80. There's line 80, right? This doesn't work, right? So, yes, okay? So then you read that and you say, we're looking for head is the word we're looking for. So we find that word head, you cross it out, and you replace it with a word of your own choosing based on what you've read in the context, because it's very important to read the context, right? So I'm going to give you guys approximately 30 seconds to do that if you have not done so already. And then we'll go to the answer choices. Okay. Yes. Okay. So we have face, countenance, possibility, and inevitability. Now, I want to make a point. So, face and countenance are too literal, right? They are legitimate dictionary definitions of head, but not in the context that we saw it in. And besides, I'll give you guys another tip. Because face and countenance, and I don't know if you're certainly familiar with face, you're probably not familiar with countenance. They essentially mean the same thing, right? So they can't both be right, therefore they must both be wrong. So A and B are eliminated, okay? Then C is possibility and D is inevitability. And even if you, for example, if you had trouble coming up with your own word, which a lot of my students do, you can think of you can think of possibility and inevitability. I will eliminate inevitability because it's too extreme. So we eliminate D, and the answer is possibility. Okay, so that was a vocabulary in context. I picked a vocabulary in context because really, if you take a few steps, you should be able to get these, pretty much all of them, right? But you have to make sure to read the context. Okay, now next question will be in section 2. Section 2, no, section 2. Yep. Okay. Yes. One more. One more. Yes. Okay. Now, I included 4 just so you can see. But this is the writing section, which is essentially grammar, guys. So, as you see on the left-hand side, there is a passage, and it's not like the reading passage. It's not particularly difficult. Nevertheless, if you take a look at number 23, that is what we call a proofreader's question, right? And a proofreader's question essentially is asking you about the grammar, essentially. And these are the majority of questions that you encounter in the writing section, right? So out of 44 questions, as many as 32 will be proofreading questions, right? Now, one of the things about proofreading questions is that if you take a look at it at number 23, there doesn't seem to be a question, right? So let's take a look at the sentence or two around where that question, quote unquote, is. So Google is taking these questions very seriously. I'm in the passage. Luckily, they're able to learn from history. How is it possible, the Google executives wonder, to make people comfortable with automated interactive technology, especially when it comes to their safety? Okay, so let's go back. So there, now, so there is A, right, no change, which by the way is a completely legitimate answer choice. We take a look at what's changing in the answer choices, right? So B is there, which is a possessive. C is its, which doesn't really make sense. And D is its with an apostrophe, right? So does anyone have a guess as to what the answer is, guys? Or since you did the test, what did you put? Anybody? Somebody? No? Okay. So anyway, it's A, it's the original, no change, okay? And I'll just do 24 as well, because 24 is another proofreading question. I want to save writing questions for later, for when you take a course. But 24 is, again, I go back and read the sentence it's in. It was also posed when the automated elevator was invented in 1900, comma, at the turn of the last century. So once again, you have no change. Then you have a full stop with nothing after it. Then you have a dash after 1900 and at the turn of the last century, and then a comma. I wonder if anyone can figure out which one it is. Going once, going twice. Okay. Nobody, really? Nobody's gonna venture a guess? Okay. So let me tell you guys. So customers around. Okay, so since no one guessed, I was hoping to see who would say C, who would say D, but the answer is B. Why? Because it's unnecessary, right? And I want to point something out to you, just as I did, in a recent question, right? So A, C, and D. Okay, if you take a look at them, they're essentially the same. And here I need to tell you some stuff, which I will tell you in the class. But A, C, and D are essentially the same. Again, because you can't meaningfully distinguish them, they can't all be right, correct? Therefore, they must all be wrong. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff, especially in the writing section, right? And a lot of my students are really surprised when I tell them that, right? So again, it's about noticing patterns and such. Okay, so let's move on to math, which is section 3. We'll do one from the no calculative section and one from the calculative section. So number 4. All right. So guys, number 4, if you see on your on the screen or on your own test, right? Number 4. If y equals 4 times 3x minus 1 times 5x minus 1, then which of the following is equal to y? Now, there are many ways to do this, but there are 2 ways that the Princeton Review would suggest. One of them is plugging in. Now, the problem with plugging in this one is that this is a no calculator section, right? So there we don't use plugging in. It's preferred not to, but you always can. Now, I'm going to use process of elimination, right? Because if you take a look at this, and you take a look at 4 times 3x times 5x, that's going to be what? That's going to be 4 times 15. So that's going to be 60x squared. So you can eliminate A and D immediately, right? If you understand how foiling works, 3x minus 1 times 5x minus 1, I'm not going to tell you how foiling works, but you realize that there's going to be a middle term with x in it. So B goes, and C is the answer. All right? Now,
C is the answer.
C is the answer, correct?
C, yes.
Yes. All right, last step, last example we're going to use is 4. Section 4, which is going to be number 29, guys. Just give me a second, guys. It takes a while. Okay, 29, almost there. One more. Okay, so 29. So I'm not going to say much about this. It says f of x equals ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d, and then it correctly points it out as a polynomial. They say a, b, c, and d are constants. If f of minus 5 equals 3, which of the following must be true about f of x? So I'm wondering if anyone, the answer is B. Yes, Maher. Maher, do you know what that's called? Anyone else for that matter? Yes, it's the polynomial remainder theorem, correct. And so, here you don't actually have to know the polynomial remainder theorem. You just know when they give you a crazy polynomial and they say what has to be true, basically it has to do with remainders. So that's how I got B. Like, I didn't even have to know what the polynomial remainder theorem is, right? Because if, again, similar to what we said earlier, right? If you look at A, C, and D, they're essentially the same. Yes, Mohammed, I think you missed it. So if you go to your online student center, and I've taken you through the beginning of it, but you can stick around if you wish. Maybe I'll explain, but yes, the marks are out essentially, as Qasim just said, correct. All right, so let's go back to where we were. Yeah. Okay, so now what? Well, here is where, you know, there are numbers here depending on where you are. This is where you would call. So I'm going to leave this up for a bit. Or you can email us at onlinelearning@score-plus.com. Right? Okay, so now, when should you take the test? Now, I'm going to talk about the big elephant in the room, which is clearly the March and May tests have been canceled. Obviously, if you don't know that, I guess you've been living under a rock, but still. Now, ideally, the next test that will be available to us, actually anywhere in the world, will be June. Okay, but that is very, you know, that's still not 100% confirmed, right? Especially in the States. So we'll see. The next one after that is August. Then there's usually an October test. There's usually not a November test in this part of the world, because in this part of the world there are only 4 administrations, whereas in the US there are double that almost, 8 or sometimes even 9 administrations. But the reason we left up the November 2020 is because I'm pretty sure they're going to try to make up for the March and May exam, which were just canceled outright, right? So the March, by the way, let me just say, the March exam was canceled in the UAE and I believe Bahrain and some other places, but there were places in the US where the March exam did happen. There were places where it was canceled, but the May exam has been canceled globally. So the May exam is not happening anywhere. Anyway, as I said, so do not, you know, you guys, especially if you're students, obviously, but you should focus on being prepared for the test when you can finally take it, right? So take advantage of this time to prepare, right? You should not worry about when can I take this test, or, you know, because look, kids all over the world are as stressed as you are, right? So don't worry, I'm pretty sure it'll work out for everybody. So you should focus on preparing. Now below are some ACT dates as well. That's also tentatively June. Again, because the ACT internationally is technically an online test, that one is easier to have people do at home. And I've read some articles where that's what they were thinking of doing. But anyway, so below you see the ACT dates. Okay. So preparation and planning are key, as I've just said several times. So look, here, let me talk a little bit more about us and what we do. So first, we make sure that you know your content. For example, if you know, let's say math, and I just showed you like the polynomial remainder theorem, right? So, or maybe quadratics more generally. if you're weak in content, we have to address that first. So that's what we do first, right? Or even in grammar, you know, in grammar, most people don't remember actually what the grammar rules are, et cetera, okay? But then close to the heels on that is strategy. And by strategy, I don't necessarily mean like how to solve, which is more technique. But strategy is very much, strategy is very much like what I just said. You know how I said like, 3 of the answers are very similar, so therefore the one that's different has to be correct? Yes, so that is strategy. There are a couple other pieces of strategy too, but that's part of it as well. Then there's technique, which, as I said, is about solving more directly. So technique is techniques such as plugging in, or what to do when in reading comprehension. First of all, we don't read the passage in its entirety, just to give you a hint. And then practice makes perfect. And then analysis of that practice, right? So even the test you've just taken, and that's why I went through it with kind of a fine-tooth comb with you, showing where everything is. There, you have to take a look at that, and then, you know, analyze what went wrong with it, et cetera, et cetera. So they will tell you open section schools. Okay. And the last part of it is confidence and endurance. And endurance, I want to tackle first, because endurance is also about stamina. So if this was your first diagnostic ever, you may have been shocked at the length of it. For those of you who took the whole test, I mean. Yeah, but you know, in a course kind of setting, we have multiple of those, so that by the time you're ready to take the real test, you've been through this experience at least 4 or 5 times, right? And that builds your confidence. So that's how we cover that. Okay. So another piece of strategy is pacing, right? Now, as you see here, this is a run through of the basic tests, or the basic test. Now, the essay is optional, and I just want to address that. So as far as I know, within the US, only the California system still requires the essay, However, pretty much all top schools require some kind of writing sample. So if you are applying to, let's say, MIT or Stanford or Amherst or whatever, and you don't have, and what I mean by a writing sample, guys, is like if you have a paper that was assigned to you and you have multiple drafts commented on by the teacher, that's what I mean by writing sample. So if you don't have a good one, you may want to consider taking the essay. So let's just get that out of the way. Now, let's go back. So this is the order in which the test is in. Reading is 65 minutes, 52 questions. And approximately, if you were to finish the whole thing, and that's what we're going to talk about on this and the next page, you would have approximately 75 seconds per question. Writing in language, it's much faster. There you have 44 questions and 35 minutes, so for 48 seconds per question. The math calculator is only 20 questions and 25 minutes, so you have 75 seconds per question. The math calculator question are 38 and 55 minutes, so that's 87 seconds per question. Again, this is assuming that you answer all of them, or that you work all of them, right? So let's talk about that. Okay, so you'll see a rabbit on the screen, right? And this is essentially the story of the hare or rabbit and the tortoise. So the bunny rabbit finishes the 58 questions. I believe that's a math section. So he does all of them, right? But he only gets 26 correct, and he gets 32 incorrect, right? So he's gotten more incorrect than correct, which is a 540, okay? So, which is not a bad score, by the way, but clearly he can do better. Now, the tortoise or turtle is a slow one, and he does 38 questions, and he gets 30 correct, okay? So 30 correct, so he gets 580. Now, I want you to notice that he only answered 38. He didn't answer all 58, right? And he still got a higher score than the hare or rabbit, right? So he had 20 guesses. If he were to add 4 more correct answers, he would get 34, he would get a 610, right? And still hasn't answered all of them because they're guesses, which we refer to as LOTD, letter of the day, which is something I talk about in my classes. So again, that's strategy, that's pacing, right? Okay, so the right coach makes all the difference. So, and what do we mean by that, right? So clearly, the SAT and the ACT are unlike tests you take in school. That's true. But doing well is a skill that can be taught. There are common mistakes. And I want you guys to think about these common mistakes in light of the tests you just took. Number 1 is pretty much across the board, answering questions too quickly. I know that again, from what we just said, right? I think most of you are kind of the rabbit, right? Because you've been trained to be the rabbit, right? But here in this kind of test, it doesn't matter if you leave a few, as long as you get the ones you've actually done correct. And if that takes you more time, then so be it, okay? Now the second, which usually happens in math, but nevertheless, it's a lot, are careless errors. So these are like calculation errors, or you write down the wrong number, or you simply, if you drop down to number 4, misreading the problem. Yes, that's a big one, right? So that's like the calculation, and you misread the problem, because remember, if you misread a math problem, correct, and you look at the answer choices, and remember that these people, the people who write the test, they anticipate what errors you'll make, right? So you think you're doing fine, and then you look at the answer choices, and there's no alarm system for you, right? So you just pick the answer, and then you realize, oh, I got this score. But then when you go back over the test, you see the mistakes you made, which is why it's valuable for you guys to do that in all 4 sections, right? To go over every single mistake you made, and even some of the things you got right, to see if you could do them faster. Now, 3 is common with a lot of my students here, doing work in your head, which is a no-no. You should always write things down. And bullet point 5 is you don't understand what to do, which is also very common. Yeah, so turn off your mic, Qasim. Thanks. Qasim, can you turn off your mic? So, thank you. So anyway, the test prep with options for every schedule and budget. And so here are our offerings, and I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, okay? So SAT self-paced, and by the way, these are all online options, given the situation now, right? Self-paced is a program in which you get the online student center and you work at your own leisure. Okay. And it's also the sort of lower base of everything. But then the second one is a blended live online, which is it's got elements of self-paced, but then you have, is it 12 hours? 8 hours of doubt clearing sessions live online with a teacher, obviously, right? So that, and then ultimate live online is an 18-hour program, and then premium live online is a 36-hour program, if you feel you need that. And then SAT Elites, which as you see is a 1,500 guarantee. However, in order to qualify for that, you need to start with a score of 1,400. So that's not an easy task to fulfill anyway. But yeah, these are all our options. And once again, you can, if you're interested in one or any of them, you can email us at onlinelearning@score-plus.com, which is again at the bottom.
All
right. So yeah. So yeah. Let's leave it there. Huh? Yeah, I don't know. Can you type, please? If you guys have any questions before your Nikhil comes on, I just want to say, sure, you can do that. Do you know how to improve your essay score? Were you aware of what you did on the essay? Like, have you done an essay before? So I would say before you rewrite it, you should, look, and it doesn't have to be us. You can get like a book anywhere, but you should at least familiarize yourself with what they're actually asking. Right? Any other questions, guys? And can you guys please shut off your mics and please type your questions in? All right, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thanks, Shidj. Any other questions, guys? That was a very good question. Thank you, sir. Yeah, you're welcome, Yusuf. So I'm just curious, anybody, did anybody, could you turn off the mic, guys? No. Yeah. Oh, so sorry. Maher, no, they're not. Because the IELTS essay, first of all, IELTS is for non-native speakers, right? And the SAT, they assume that you are kind of a native speaker level, right? So the demands are quite different, right? And they're kind of complicated. Now, in terms of restate the effect of doing the essay, sure. I mean, again, if you're talking about the top, let's say 200 schools, a lot, very a lot, but remember there are 4,000 schools, so 200 is not that much. But if you think of the top 200 schools, everyone wants a writing sample, right? Now, some of them may not require the essay, but they want a writing sample from you nonetheless. So if you don't have a kind of set, a piece that you've written especially for those of you in 11th and or 12th grade, that, and that's really when you should have written it, like a research project or something that you've written and that you have, your teacher give you feedback on, and you have multiple drafts, that kind of writing. If you don't have that, then I would suggest you write the essay, because you don't have the kind of quality that they're looking for when they ask you for a writing sample. Can we do the SAT as many times as you need? Yes, you can. However, so I say, I say to my students, you should prep for 1, plan for 2, and in a pinch, take 3. Now, you should try very hard to keep it to 2. Don't do, can I do it 10 times? Theoretically, but what grade are you in, Qasim? I'm curious. What grade are you in? So if you're in 11th and 12th grade, think about it. You won't have time to take it 10 times, right? Because you only got 4 times a year to do it here, right? 2 of them are already gone. So, I think that answers your question. So can you do it 10 times? Sure, theoretically, but it's not ideal, is my answer, right? Ideally, you should take it twice, ideally. What else, guys? Do you know the coast? I need to book. About $97 without the essay, and about $115 with the essay. This is dollars, so you convert it to dirhams. Yes, kind of. Yeah, kind of. There are other tests which you will see when you get older, Qasim, which are even more expensive, such as the GMAT. But first, let's pass this test. All right. So, if everyone's okay, I'm going to, let's see, you're welcome. So I just want to make sure that everyone's all right. So we have to move on. Okay, great. So thank you guys for your kind attention. You're welcome. And yeah, on to the next session.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Nikhil, are you off? I'm going to stop.
So, am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible out there. I think you need to share your screen.
Yes. In this session, I'm going to talk about what's the deal with the APs, which stands for Advanced Placements, and the SAT subject tests. First things first. The plan for today is I'm gonna talk a little bit about SAT subject tests. Then we'll talk about APs, and there are some changes that have been happening to the scheduling and the format of these tests due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So these changes is something that most of my students have been worried about, and I would like to update you guys about those as well. First, a little bit about me. My name is Nikhil Sarawadekar. I have a BTech in Engineering Physics from IIT Bombay. I've been working with the Princeton Review since 2012 in the UAE. I mostly teach SAT subject tests, primarily math, physics, and chem, and AP tests as well. But I also teach SAT, GRE, and GMAT. I was born and raised in Pune in India, and in my spare time, I like to game a lot, and I listen and play a lot of music. Okay, now let's first talk about what the SAT subject tests are. Some of you might be aware of these, but I'm going to go over the basics just in case. SAT subject tests are 60 minutes long specific tests that test your content knowledge in one particular subject. There is a lot of SAT subject tests that you can take. They are offered 6 times a year internationally, and because each test is 60 minutes long, you can only take a maximum of 3 tests on any one day. They are administered along with the SAT ones as well, and since that test goes for 3.5 hours, these go for 3 hours in total. As I said, the test format is 60 minutes for every test. The number of questions vary depending upon which test are you taking. Depends upon, so for example, the chemistry test has 85 questions, whereas the math test has only 50 questions. Either way, each test will be 60 minutes long only. The calculators are not allowed on most of the tests, except for the 2 math tests that you take. For math level 1 and math 2C, the calculators are allowed. They are scored on a scale of 200 and 800, just like your SAT 1. But for SAT subject tests, it still uses the old format of the SAT, the pre-2015 format that Dennis was talking about, which means you will be presented with 5 answer choices for every question, and you will be penalized for wrong answers. So you basically get like a +1 for every correct answer and -1/4 for every wrong answer. If you leave something blank, then there is no penalty. It's just a 0. If you want to take the SAT subject test, you'll have to register on the College Board website, just like you do for the SATs. Usually the registration deadlines are 1 month before the actual test date. If you know that you're going to take a test and you know which date you're going to take it, I generally recommend all my students to book the date as soon as possible, because the dates are not flexible and they don't change, and sometimes they get filled up very fast. The cost for taking any SAT subject tests is, for the registration, it's going to cost you $26, and for every, yes, if you don't know the answers, you can keep it blank. In fact, it's actually recommended that you leave it blank. You read a problem, and if it sounds Chinese to you, just leave it blank. But that's something that rarely happens. They are required by some universities. I will answer that question in much more detail in one of my further slides. I'll tell you exactly which universities require those tests and which ones don't. Okay, as I was saying, it costs $26 to register for the test, and every test that you take will cost you $22, and these are the international rates. Okay, now how many SAT subject tests are actually administered? Total, there are 19 subject tests that you can choose from. But we generally recommend not taking a lot of them. Usually your college requirements will dictate which test that you should take. Anywhere between 2 to 3 is good enough. Which subject test you should take basically is decided by your college goals. It depends upon what major you want to do in college. It depends upon which college you want to apply to. It depends upon what kind of grades you have, GPA. There are multiple objectives that a SAT subject test will actually accomplish. Based on your requirement, you decide which subject test to take. Generally, don't go for the ones that are easy, because SAT subject tests are expected to be a complementary to your application. So you have to make sure that they're actually relevant to what you're trying to apply to. So why should anyone take these subject tests? There are multiple advantages of SAT subject tests. First, if you apply with a SAT subject score which is really good, it will distinguish you from all the applicants that are competing for the same spot at the university. It basically puts your application right on the top of the pile. Like sometimes for some colleges it's just required. Some colleges will simply recommend it. Some colleges don't even talk about SAT subject test. But even for those colleges, if you have a SAT subject score, let me give you an example. Imagine if you're applying for a physics major, and if you apply with like a 750 plus score on your SAT physics, even though your university does not ask for it explicitly or even doesn't recommend it, if you're applying for a physics major, then they are going to take your application way more seriously than they will take anyone else's. So because they know that you love physics, they You know that you want to demonstrate that you're good at that, and they know exactly what you're doing. So it's a very good way of showing the applications team at the universities that you mean business when you want to apply for a particular seat at the university. It definitely strengthens your transcript. What I mean by that is sometimes for some reason in your junior year you get focused on something else, or if you're focusing on your SAT 1, or you had too much schoolwork to do, or any n number of personal reasons, if you don't do very well during your junior year, it's going to effectively lower your predicted grades, and there is very limited your teachers can do about that. But in case you want to convince the applications team at university that, hey, you know what, I know I'm pretty good at math, it's just that I didn't do very well this year. One very good way to actually do that is to show them a very good math score on SAT subject test. That basically provides a very good incentive. It provides them a very good insight and reason to believe you when you say in your application that, hey, I'm actually good at math and I would like to do this particular thing at your school. Another biggest advantage of taking SAT subject tests is you will be studying something you genuinely like. Because if you don't like that subject, you will never take that subject for SAT subject test anyway. These tests are very content intensive, which means you're expected to know the stuff you're doing or the stuff you're answering about, which means you genuinely need to have a little bit of love for that subject. It makes it very easy when you do that. Another advantage SAT subject tests give you is if you're going through the process, this mental process of deciding which SAT subject you're taking, usually this process starts in your sophomore year or your 10th grade, which basically means that automatically you're going to start thinking about your college applications, your future, your career goals much before in advance. Unfortunately, because you can't do SAT 1 and SAT subject test on the same day, you have to plan it out. Like if you decide to take, say, SAT 1 on October, then you know you're going to take SAT subject test in December, which means you know you can't take the SAT 1 again in December even if you want to, because you will have to register for it again. So this whole planning basically puts you, your starting line is much ahead of the others. That ultimately helps you finish your applications early. Now to answer Qasim's earlier question, there are almost 30 colleges or universities that require or recommend SAT subject tests for some major. There are a few colleges that ask you for SAT subject tests for every major. Some of them, as I said, they require or recommend it from some majors. If you want to know whether the college you are applying to requires a SAT subject test or not, the best way to find that out is either check out their website. Usually the requirements are very clearly stated. If it's still not clear, I would recommend talk to one of the admissions counselor in your school, or you can directly get in touch with the university. They're usually very responsive about that. You can just write them an email saying that I plan to apply to university next year. Please let me know what requirements do you have. Just an example I've shown you on the screen of places like these are most elite schools, and these are requirements, by the way. The list on in front of you, they are not recommended tests. They're actually something that are absolutely required. So Caltech and MIT are exclusively engineering schools, which is why they require SAT subject test in math. And then one science test of your choice. This science test could be either physics or chem or biology. It depends. Now, for example, Yale only recommends, but it's not required. But please remember what this means. Just because Yale only recommends a SAT subject test, but it doesn't say it's required, it basically means you should take it. The reason is simple. If they're recommending the test on their website, as I said earlier, everyone who's going to apply for that seat against you will have a SAT subject score. Which means if you apply without a SAT subject score, it's going to put your application at a disadvantage. It's not worth the risk. It's one test, takes around 8 weeks of prep, and you can actually ace it. So might as well put in the time, take your efforts, and make sure that your application is 100%. NYU, it actually requires 3 SAT subject tests, or you can use your AP scores as well. We'll talk about AP scores in a minute after I'm done with SAT subject test. But NYU is it's much more specific. It depends upon the major you're applying to. but they always require at least one literature or one humanities SAT subject test. That's a kind of unique requirement for NYU. Okay. Before I move on, do you guys have any questions about SAT subject tests? What's the difference between a test 1 and a test 2? Okay, so what they're talking about here is SAT subject math level 1 and level 2. They're basically both tests in math. Their syllabus is completely different. The format is exactly the same. It's 50 questions, 60 minutes. Math level 1 is considered to be easier to score on. Math level 2 is slightly harder. But as I said, the syllabus is completely different. The syllabus for math level 1 is very similar to the syllabus of SAT 1. Math level 2 has nothing in common with SAT 1. They're completely two different tests. Do all students encouraged to take these tests? These tests serves a lot of purpose. Like, as I said earlier, help your application. Sometimes if you're applying somewhere outside the US, like, if you're applying to somewhere in the Middle East, some of those universities will actually ask for such subject tests as qualifications. It depends. If the college you're applying to usually asks for such subject tests, or if the students who apply to those universities usually apply with such subject scores, then they're definitely encouraged. Let me put it this way. There is no downside of taking a SAT subject test. Usually there is only advantages. If you feel that you've not done very well on the test, you always have a choice of not reporting that score. You can ask College Board to take that score off your list. It's actually possible. So if you're ever in doubt, and if you have the time, you have the inclination, if you feel like, yes, maybe I should take the test, just take it. Yes, Yale University does not require SAT subject tests, but as I said, it's recommended, which basically means you should most likely take it. They will expect SAT subject scores. So someone getting in without any SAT subject scores or AP scores will also need to have amazing application. So you'll have to have something else that makes up for lack of those subject scores. Anything else? You just said don't need me. Cambridge, okay. So generally, as a requirement, all of this SAT subjects tests are required only in American universities. For British universities, they will not ask you for SAT subject scores. They generally take your A levels as good enough as applications. What grade can or should we start taking these tests? That answer depends upon which test are you planning to take. When should you take this test? I will talk about this in a little bit of detail again later on. But ideally speaking, you should try at least a few of these, one or two, in your 11th grade. Because there is a lot of SAT subject tests that you can easily ace with the knowledge that you have in 11th grade. Actually, it's encouraged that you take it in 11th grade. That way you can use the time in 12th grade. Your A levels will compensate for SAT level 2 in physics and math. But if you're applying to an American university, might as well take them again, unless you have like something else to do. SAT scores will expire, but you will be in college long before that. Don't worry about that. Like they are valid for long enough that you don't have to worry about that. And yes, SAT subject tests are actually encouraged that you should be taking them in 11th grade. Because as I said, some of them are easily manageable in 11th grade, and you have time on your hands in 11th to do SATs and SAT subject tests. Compared to CBSE subjects, how much extra hard SAT subjects? They're actually not very much harder than CBSE. But what happens is if you're applying or if you're planning to attempt any of the SAT subject tests in 11th grade, most CBSE students have not finished a lot of portion by then, which means you will have to study for it, you'll have to prepare for it. The one advantage it will give you is that when you do those things in school, it won't be the first time you're looking at those concepts. It'll actually help you score better in your school as well. Hard or easy is the test? The best way to answer that question is come to one of our offices and take a diagnostic test for free. Figure out which subject test you want to try it out. Well, obviously that's not an option right now, but because hard and easy is a very subjective question. Some people will find it easy, some people will find it difficult. But let me compare it with your average American high school. I would say it's around 10 to 20% slightly harder. Yes, the diagnostics are free, but I honestly right now don't know what the mechanics of it is. Generally, we just ask our students to come down to the center and then take the test. But right now, we are not allowed to do that. No, I don't think there are any subject tests on the website. Okay, I think that was enough questions. If you have any questions, any more questions about SAT subject test, let's hold on until the end of the session. Right now, I want to move on to something called APs. APs, as I said, they stand for Advanced Placements. I told you the cost. The cost is $26 to register and $22 per test. Depends upon how many tests you take. Most students will have to attempt some tests once or twice. You might have to take it more than once. Okay, you're welcome. All right, as I was saying, AP exams stands for Advanced Placements. APs are very much on the line on SAT subject tests. However, they are a bit of notches higher on difficulty level. So what actually APs are the content covered in AP courses will be the content you will be doing in the first year of your college. So it is considerably difficult than your high school stuff, but there are multiple advantages of actually doing it. One big advantage is that any AP course, if you're taking it in your school, will be used as an equivalency for as a replacement for your regular physics, math, bio, whatever course that you should have for graduating from high school. Another big advantage is if you have a 4 or a 5, most universities will require a 5. These are graded on a scale of 1 to 5. And if you have a score of 4 or 5, most universities will give you credit for those scores. What that means is that if you want, you can drop that particular course in the first year of your college and they will still give you credit for it, which basically saves you a lot of time and money because you don't have to do that course. That is one of the reasons why most students prefer to take AP courses. These tests are only offered in May, and to register for these, ideally your school should be offering AP courses in-house. If your school does not offer any AP courses, then you can still take the test and register externally, but make sure you make that decision and register beforehand. Most of the registrations will end before the calendar year starts. Like for example, the registrations for AP exams in 2020 were over in 2019 itself. So if you decide that you want to take an AP test, make sure you register as soon as possible. There are multiple schools in UAE that offer AP tests for students who are not in their school. As I said, they are all administered in a 2-week period in May, and the scores generally come out in July. If your school is offering AP courses in school, then your teachers can give you predicted grades for your APs. But if the course is not offered in your school, that means you won't have any predicted grades. I do have a list of those schools. I just don't know them on the top of my head. Tell you what, Qasim, I'll show you my email at the end of the session. You can email me. I'll send you the list of schools. Ideally speaking, yes, you can take the tests in grade 9. There is no age limit on those tests, but grade 9 will be way too early for AP tests. Most of these AP tests will require a certain amount of time, dedication, and hard work because they are not easy and like it's not a cakewalk. So I've known students who have taken 8 APs, 9 APs, and they do very well on those. But these are the kids who plan it long ahead before time. You can manage it, you can do it, but I would not recommend anyone to take the AP in 9th grade. Even 10th grade, I would say is a little early, but you can try and attempt a few in 10th grade. 11th grade is basically when you try and take all the APs and you get done with them in the summer after your 11th grade, which means when you apply for your colleges, your AP scores will already be in your hand. What do they exactly test? I would say they basically test content knowledge in depth about that particular one subject, and they primarily test the understanding of that subject. They test your understanding of that subject. So most of these tests will try to help you out as much as possible. They'll give you a list of formulas, they'll give you all the constants, calculators are allowed, most of them. As a result, if you know the content and if you know the subject very well, you can do very well. New notifications, I don't know what your actual name is. This year they will happen twice. Next year, I doubt it because this is only a one-time thing because of the pandemic. I'll talk about these changes towards the end of the session. Did I miss anything? So as I said, please make sure that if you want to register for the APs, you make that decision as soon as possible and register them with the school that offers or in your school itself. Now, there are a few things you should know about the APs. It's one of the popular courses to take in the US. Not every AP test is equivalent. Some APs are easy to score on, some APs are not that easy to score on. Physics 1 is actually considered one of the hardest APs to get a 5 on. It's around 8% people who take the test get a 5. Calculus BC, not that hard. A lot of them actually get 5s, but the easiest of them are actually language exams. The highest average scores generally end up on language exams. Can either one of you venture a guess why? Language exams are like spoken French or spoken Chinese or Spanish. Most of these AP courses end up getting highest average scores. Would anyone like to take a guess? Why would that be? Yes, that's kind of true. You still need to know in-depth knowledge of the language, the grammar rules, the syntax, that is still required. But the reason why their average scores come out to be higher is because the most people who take these tests, they are native speakers. As a result, they are generally fluent and very proficient in their language anyway. So that's why scoring on that test is not that hard. I also have a list of universities which received most AP scores in 2016. If you notice, most of these colleges are top-ranked colleges, which basically means that most top rankers will try to get AP scores. As I said, it's APs and SAT subject tests serve very similar purposes as far as applications are concerned, but their paths are slightly different. There are a total of 38 different AP subject exams that you can take. Most of these are language exams, which means you will not be able to take all of them. There is no limit on how many tests you can take. As I said, I've known students who have taken 8 or 9 tests in their career, but these students generally space out their AP courses. They take a few in 9th grade, sorry, they will take a few in 11th grade, take a few in 12th grade, and that's how they make sure that all their APs are done well within time. We do not recommend taking more than 4 AP courses in one particular year because it becomes very, very hectic. As I said, these tests require dedication, they require time, they require hard work. Ideally, 2 tests should be easy to manage for anyone who likes those particular subjects. Remember, and ultimately the objective of AP tests is the same. Show the college that you know you're good at something and you can prove it on paper. That's exactly the point. But as I said, the another advantage of AP is you can actually drop those courses, which actually saves you time and money. It is highly recommended that you prepare for these tests. Ideally, as I said, you should be taking the courses in school itself, but if you're not, you will have to plan ahead. You will have to make sure you know the content very well. That's the only way you can do very well on the test. Unlike the SATs or SAT subject tests, you can attempt any of the AP tests only once. I mean, you can take it the following year, but generally that doesn't happen, which means you only get one shot at the test, and they are graded on a very steep curve depending upon the test. So I would not recommend anyone to take AP exams lightly. Think ahead, plan ahead, and then make a decision. They definitely value AP exams higher than SAT subject scores, but they will obviously give you concessions if AP exams are not offered in your school. If you make that clear in your application essay that I only took the SAT subject test because APs were not available to me, then they will consider them to be valid. APs also show you the content knowledge. Like if you get a good score on AP, that clearly shows you have mastery of the subject, and even more, the content that SAT level 2 covers is considerably smaller than AP exams. APs are far more encompassing. So if you have to ever choose that, shall I take AP or shall I take SAT subject test, APs are always the way to go. But APs also come with their own challenge, so you just have to make sure that it's a good fit for you. I would like to talk about the format of the APs now. Yes, if you can always prefer AP or SAT subject test, but as I said, sometimes it's not an option everyone has. SAT subject tests are offered multiple times a year. They require less amount of time to prepare. You can do it even if you decide to apply to colleges a little late. There are a lot of reasons people can't do APs, but if you can, APs are always preferred, no doubt about that. So let me talk about the format of the test. Each test is roughly 3 hours long. It will always have at least 2 sections, one section which is multiple choice, one section which is free response. In free response questions, you're expected to show your work and you're awarded points based on the steps you show. The multiple choice questions are actually graded by machine, but the free response questions are actually yes, but the universities that require SAT subject test will take AP scores as replacement for SAT subject tests. Okay, what was I saying? Yeah, formats of the questions. So there is multiple choice questions and there is free response. The free response, you will have to show your work and you're awarded points based on the steps you show. They are graded by a person, not a machine. So Your handwriting matters, your steps will matter. Yes, it is always best that you have AP course credit and AP exam too, but not everyone has that option, especially in this part of the world. Very few schools actually offer AP course credit in their curriculum. They just don't have the infrastructure to support that. So AP exam is the best option some students will actually have. Okay, so let's talk about why one should take the AP test. The reasons are actually quite similar on the lines of why one should take SAT subject tests. But as I said, there are a few advantages that APs offer that SAT subjects don't. One is that they are usually valued higher than SAT subject tests by the university, so it will look better on your application. Okay. I thought we were talking about American applications. Okay. The AP exams, well, in one word, I would say they are difficult. They're definitely not easy, for sure. Depends upon which AP you're taking, because there are some APs that can be easily manageable with little effort. But in general, the AP exams are hard. If the AP course credit shows on your transcript, then it actually weighs your transcript much heavier. That's something that SAT subjects don't offer the option of. SAT subject tests.
Unmuted.
Hello. Okay. Can you mute your mic, please? Okay, thank you. So the advantages of AP courses are that they definitely strengthen your transcript, because if it shows that you've taken AP courses during your high school, it will definitely weigh better for your GPA as well. Compared sometimes to other applications in the university, if you have an AP score, your application will be weighed better. The college. Okay. Now, whether a particular college will give you credit based on a particular AP score or not will vary based on the college. Most colleges will require a 4 to give you a course credit for the AP score. The tests happen in May. Ideal time would be the summer after your 11th grade. That's the best time to take the AP test. So anyone who is interested in one particular subject, they know which major or which university they're planning to apply to, I would recommend that they should take the AP tests, they should plan ahead, they should start preparing, and make sure that you get your AP scores on your application before you apply. Now, when should you take the AP exams or the SAT subject tests? Technically, this is a very personal choice because you have to plan things ahead according to your pace and your requirement. Yes, ideally after 11th grade. So that's exactly what I'm going to talk about now. What should be the ideal timeline when you should take your tests? Because most students will not be taking just one SAT. They'll be taking SAT, SAT subject test, APs. Some might actually try their hands at the ACT. We generally try to make sure that all of these tests and the scores are done before you start your college applications in your senior year. So ideal timeline will basically look like this. Your freshman year, that's like your 9th grade and 10th grade primarily focus on your school grades, because those grades will ultimately affect your predicted grades when you apply to colleges. Your 10th grade, if you want, you can start preparing for the SAT, or you can try the PSAT in the 10th grade if you want. Ideal time to take the SAT will be somewhere in the middle of your junior year. But in your junior year, make sure you register for your APs or SAT subject tests. And before the summer of your junior year finishes, you should have all your SAT subject scores, you should have your SAT scores, everything ready for your senior year when you're applying for colleges. Because college admissions, the process itself can be very daunting. You have to write a lot of essays, you'll be applying to different universities, you have to get letters of recommendation. All of that, along with your school work, can get hectic. We don't want you guys to focus on tests in your senior year. That's just adds on to all that pressure that technically is not necessary. Remember, if you're taking ACT, you can actually take the ACT in August, which technically still counts as the summer after your junior year. For most college applications, remember, quality is always better than quantity. Meaning, you don't have to show a lot of attempts, but if you show good scores and good improvements in the minimum number of attempts, that's always better. If you feel that you're not going to score very great on APs, then it is not recommended that you go for them, then go for SAT subject tests, because showing a very low grade on an AP exam does not do well for your college application. So it's like a two-edged sword. Make sure that before you jump into it, you can definitely score very well on it. If you feel that you're not ready, or if you're not, or should you go for it or not, I recommend check the material online. There is a lot of past papers that are released by College Board every year. They have a lot of material available free of cost. You can check it out. Based on that, you can make your decision. There are a few changes that are happening due to this COVID-19 pandemic. That's what I'm going to talk about now. I'm sure you guys know that March and May tests have already been cancelled for SAT subject tests. The June tests, getting told, will definitely happen. The dates, however, might change depending upon how the pandemic is responding. The APs are definitely happening for sure in the summer. The format has changed. So if you are one of those students who are applying for APs, then please pay attention. And by the way, these changes are definitely happening this year. Next year, they might resume the regular format. There is only one way to know: when they announce it. The changes happening are like this. The tests will be administered at home. So you'll be taking tests at home on the exam is, well, yes, it is available multiple times, but you can't take it. It only happens once a year. So you technically have just one shot at the test. Arsenal, can you please mute your mic? Thank you. So yeah, the tests will have to be taken at home. You can basically use any smart device that you have, like a phone or a tablet or a computer or a laptop. If you want, like if it's required, technically they've also kept an option of taking a photo of your answers and submitting those. That's also going to be an option. For diagnostic tests, yes, we have some diagnostic you can take, but again, you'll have to come to a center. I don't know how that's going to work. This year, there is only going to be free response questions. That's going to be 45 minutes long test. There are no multiple choice question. Again, calculators are allowed. This is basically being done to make sure that the test stays authentic and people don't cheat. They're going to give 2 test dates only this year. That's only because most students did not finish all the portion in their school. So some students would feel that they would rather take the test as soon as possible when all the material is still fresh. And sometimes people will need a little more time to revise and refresh. So those people can take the test at a later date. The actual test dates will be announced on 3rd of April. They haven't announced the date yet. The entire test will be on a reduced syllabus. The relevant syllabus will only be roughly what might have been covered in your schools till March. That exact syllabus is already up on the College Board website. So if you know which AP you're taking, then you might want to go check it out. On 3rd of April, they are also expected to release more study material and more relevant information about what kind of questions to expect on this year's APs. So right now, most of us are in pretty much dark. We don't know what kind of test to expect. Things will become much more clearer on 3rd of April. Most colleges are showing willingness to give you credit for these shortened taken at home AP exams as well. There are multiple places, there are multiple measures that they have put in place to make sure that you guys don't cheat. They are planning to use anti-plagiarism software. So if you are, yes, but as I said, first of all, I would not recommend that you cheat. Then if you do cheat, I'm pretty sure they're gonna catch you. There are multiple ways in which they can show. Like one of the things that they're gonna do is something called an anti-plagiarism software. What that means is that if multiple people are taking the test sitting in the same room, and if you write exactly the same answer, then they will know. Another thing that they're basically doing is, because it's a shortened test, and since the entire test is going to be free response, you probably won't have a lot of time to talk to each other, get material to help you, or Google, or if you do any of that, it's actually going to hamper your score in the long run. So trust me, the better prepared you are, the better you'll do on the score. Also, if you are taking the test this year, I would like to tell you guys, most of you have been preparing for a long time. So just trust yourself, have a little faith in yourself. Those guys their job is to make sure that the universities understand how much hard work you've been putting in. A-level courses overlap with AP courses. I'll come back to that in a minute. If you do not want to take the test this year, they are offering a full refund. You can actually get that refund from the school itself, and just go and ask for a refund. They will tell you the process, and you can get it done. Okay. What can we do? Like people have been discussing in the chat, we have a lot of options available for people who want to take APs, like starting from registrations, then tutoring. We have amazing books for all AP exams, and we also offer homework help. We have in-class classes. Now we're going to do them online. Most of our classes will cover every topic and everything in detail, and we actually solve most of the past papers as well when we do our classes. There was one question that I wanted to answer. Yes, as far as the level is concerned, A levels and AP courses have a lot of overlap, but there is a big difference in the way the questions are tested. They basically test very similar concepts, but the way the questions are framed are very, very different. A levels questions are very standard and straightforward. They're mostly applications of formulas. AP questions, they are slightly twisted. They require you to think a little outside the box. How will I receive college credit? I don't know. You won't receive college credit for A levels. Oh, this is a different question. You will receive college credit when you go to college. So what you do is when you go to the college, you basically apply with your AP scores. In college, if you tell them that I have a 5 on AP Calculus BC and I would like to drop Math 101 from my first year, then they will basically give you credits for that particular course on your score sheet, and you never have to take that score. You never have to take that course. Okay. Do you guys have any other questions? Oh, you're welcome, Ms. Kalwani. Does anyone have any questions before we end the session? All right, you guys are welcome.
Can you make me the presenter for a moment?
Pardon me?
Can you make me the presenter?
Done this, right?
Yes.